don't recall much between meeting the Man of Wax and entering this hotel. I just remember him saying to me,
I know where Ivy is, dear. Follow me to somewhere safe while I go find her.
Suddenly, this doorway of light showed up. He took his hand out and nodded for me to follow him. And my mind at that point was so foggy and full of fear, I didn't know what else to do. I had nowhere else to go either way and no one to comfort me. Ivy was gone, and now I'm told that he knows where she is. My mind, in this state of just confusion, just said yes and followed him. From here, my memory is blurry. I just recall walking through the doorway of light and somehow ending up in this giant hotel. I was at the entrance, and the man was suddenly at the greeting desk, despite him being a few feet away from me earlier. The doors that would normally lead outside of this hotel were closed, and there was nothing but blackness beyond the glass. I asked the man where we were, and all he said was,
"A world far from the awoken, but far from the slumbering as well."
The hotel itself felt like one of those fancy ones that we'd always peek into through the windows as kids. The ones with the fancy chandeliers and chairs, the one with men and women in suits moving like water to the tables, who gave these people in fancy and pretty dresses tiny, tiny food the size of one potato chip. Our mom and dad were very vocal about those kind of people, often mocking, insulting, and laughing about them. The hotel I was in had many things, according to this wax man. It had a theater, a large diner, and seemingly endless amounts of rooms to sleep in. According to him,
"There's as many rooms as there are fingers in a full theater."
My tiny, overstimulated, and tired brain just didn't want to do the math, and just nodded. The entrance, the area I was in when I had arrived, was this grand area. It was almost as tall as an entire house, and it was just one room. The walls of the place were covered in this velvet red color, and underneath them were these coffee brown baseboards and handrails at their bottom. Behind this wax man was a large plaque that read, "A room for all, but none too." The chandelier above me caught my eye, and as I looked up, I could see that in the corners and darker spots of this hotel were cracks. In those cracks, this pus-like ooze just seemed to leak out and bubble. Its color was almost identical to that of the waxman's own skin, and the bubbles themselves seemed to breathe. They'd go, and then stop, and then go, and then stop. I was mesmerized by it for a moment, like I was watching a crashing train. You can't look away, but you want to. But one loud breath from the waxman yanked my mind out of the loop. I slowly walked up to the waxman, and he moved one of his arms, and he pulled out a ticket. It was golden in color, with dark black ink for its letters and numbers, the numbers themselves taking up most of the ticket. 203. Two symbols of an eye were on each side, and the words on it read, "Go to 203. There you'll find a room you love." He pointed to where the rooms were and spoke.
"Down there, find that number. Let them see the eyes, and you may rest."
I nodded, my eyes glued to him the entire time I went to the corridor. The entire walk to the room, I think he stared at me. How can someone with no eyes stare at you? I walked down the hallway. Each room had a number above them, and on the doors were eyes. The doors and eyes were wooden. Little cuts and scratches and stains coated them like zebra patterns. Behind some doors, I heard giggles, laughs, cries. I think I even heard someone scream in one of them. The handles on the doors were low, at my level. It was like this place was built for me and other girls and boys. Some parts of the wall had more of that wax, like goo, just breathing through its cracks, in and out and in and out, over and over, like a slumbering body. Behind doors, I could hear other kids. Kids like me, I presumed. Near a door, labeled 17-8, was a loud sob. A very loud sob. I leaned on the door to hear what was being said, and I believe I caught some words.
Otto.
I went to knock, but as I leaned away, a loud wooden creak was above me. The eye above the door was suddenly open and staring at me. I leaped back, yelling in shock. The sobbing behind the door went silent as the eye looked at me. And then a voice from somewhere, I couldn't pin where. Maybe it was in the walls themselves, but I heard a voice say, "Not your home." I quickly ran and overshot where I was going, having to go to a screeching halt to go back and see that I ran past 203. The voice spoke again, a little more high-pitched this time. "Welcome home." The eye shut with a loud wooden bang, and it surprised me because I didn't even show it my ticket. It was like it knew I belonged there. As the eye closed, the door creaked open, and there my room sat, and it was my old bedroom. My old bedroom from before I entered this place. It looked exactly like my old bedroom from home, all the way down to the little carpet stains and chipped paint bits on the wall, my dolls, my toys, my drawings, the pretend tea party silverware, all of it. And not only that, but it was normal sized. Ever since we've been here, everything's felt so tall and large, but here it felt normal, like I was back home. I threw my rucksack onto the floor, ignoring the thud it made. I got onto my bed, feeling odd. I didn't require the extra breath to climb up, and I just laid there, on the familiar pillow that was soft and comforting. And then I could suddenly hear that tune, the one Mom used to sing. It came from a music box in the corner of the room, and the tone caused my eyes to close, and I fell into slumber. I almost forgot I wasn't in reality until I heard a knock at the door, a high-up one, too. It had to be the wax man. I got off my bed and yelled, "Yes?"
A guest is waiting for you.
My heart sank with joy. Ivy? The door opened, and there sat the wax man and Ivy. Ivy didn't even let the door fully open before she dashed over to hug me. "Oh God, Hazel! Oh God, I was so scared. Oh God." She stopped for a second and looked in my eyes. Her eyes were something I almost forgot. Tears were pouring down her cheeks as she could barely get her words out. You have no idea how scared I was. I thought I was never gonna see you again. Are you hurt? Did he hurt you?" Ivy pointed at the wax man, and in response he stomped his foot and stared at us. His eyeless sockets were haunting.
I would never.
Ivy ignored him, and so did I. She just kept talking to me, and by this point, I had started joining her in the crying. "I've been through so much, Hazel. I went through hell to find you. What happened to you?" It's a long story, Ivy. I'm a good listener. You can tell me." The wax man then spoke above her cries.
I'll leave you to be.
He shut the door and just let me and Ivy go ahead and catch up. Ivy hopped on my bed and motioned for me to join. As I crawled up, she put a hand on my shoulder. Hazel, what happened when that thing pulled me into the TV? Well, I waited a bit, cried a lot, but I ended up eating a good chunk of the food. And at first I went to go find that scarecrow guy, but I couldn't see him. I found this little town with what I thought was people, but it was these crazy bastards who make teenagers have kids and then make them sacrifice those kids and to these crows, but the crows didn't take me, and the people died. I walked out of there and I found that thing. That sounds so horrid. I went through some bad things too. I found this cowboy with a weird horse. He tried to kill me and chop my head off, but I got out and that thing took me here too. What else happened, Ivy? A thought ran through her head, and whatever it was, it made her shake. That was it. I just had to run from that crazy cowboy guy and not a whole lot else. I nearly died. And I was just so scared. I was so scared I'd never see you again. Well, I'm glad you're back. I missed you, Ivy. I reached over to my rucksack and pulled out Mr. Teddy and spoke for him. I missed you too. Ivy just kept staring at me, and I stared back, and her eyes were bloodshot. They were blood red. Ivy, your eyes, are you okay? She then blinked profusely and rubbed her eyes. Oh, sorry, I just, I haven't blinked in a bit. There were these lines down her face, though, that told me she was lying. I giggled and looked at her rucksack that she was now setting down. Do you still have that sketchbook? Yeah. You want to draw? Yeah. She pulled it out and handed me a pencil. And I decided to draw something from home since, well, it felt like we were back home. I put the book onto the bed and laid on my stomach. I even kicked my legs up, which I only really do when I'm really happy. I decided to draw that one photo in the living room. The one where Mom and Dad had a random old lady take a photo of us. But the old lady only took a photo of me and Ivy, so you couldn't even see Mom and Dad's face. They knew it was a weird photo, but they hung it up anyway. They always said that it wasn't them who was important, but their two flowers. That was something I miss about Mom and Dad. They would call us flowers. Dad said he didn't used to call us flowers, but Mom did it so much that it rubbed off on him. Ivy was staring at the ceiling and started to speak as I just finished up the drawing. I wonder why that thing took us to this place. Like, this place. She gestured to the beds that we were laying on and blinked, her eyes seeming to do it at different rates. I could tell she was using every bit of energy in her to stay up, but every bit of energy was gone in her. Ivy, please sleep. Please. You look so stressed. Go to bed, okay? We can rest here. She turned to me with her reddish eyes, and her tone turned into annoyance. I don't care. I laid my hand on her shoulder and looked at her eyes. But before I spoke, I could see her eyes were getting wet. Just trying to comfort her seemed to make her tear up. I had to hold back my dam from leaking too. I'm tired too. So let's just rest, okay? She sniffled and wiped at her eyes. Fine, I'll take a nap. I'm tired of being scared. I want to feel safe. We're safe here. Look, we're literally in our own room. I hoped it'd cheer her up when I pointed out the fact we're home, but it seemed to do the opposite. I'm just looking at I feel like I'm looking into a mirror. This is just a reflection. Like, this is, like, it's so close, but I can't go there. I feel so close to home, but I know it's not home. I want to go home, Hazel. I want to go home. She began to just sob and hug me, screaming into my coat. Shit, it's okay. It's okay. Calm down. I get it. We'll get home one day. I know we will. Mentioning us going home made her sob even harder. Like, she didn't believe me, and I understood why. I tried to hug her tighter, but it only made it worse. Please, calm down. We're gonna go home someday, okay? Her words were barely even words now, between the crying. She lifted up her head, and a few audible words were heard. Mom, we'll get home. I swear.
Shut up! Shut up!
Ivy, please, just try to...
Let go of me!
She tore herself off me and looked at me with this blood-red face of soaked tears and anger. Ivy, please, try and sleep. I promise you're gonna feel way better right after, okay?
Fine. I don't care. I don't care anymore.
She very slowly turned over and laid on her side. I wanted to try and comfort her, but I knew it wasn't gonna work. So I just laid there facing away, letting my mind drift away as her sniffles slowly silenced away. And just as slowly, I fell asleep. When I woke up, I saw Ivy laying on her stomach, just like I was. Her eyes were wide open now and red, and she had this look in her eyes, not of anger, fear, or sorrow, but a look of being sorry. She knew I woke up, but didn't say anything. Instead, she looked in my sketchbook and mumbled out a few words.
You still care about them?
Yes! We don't know why they became those things, but I love them. They're our mom and dad. Her hands turned to fist, and her tone got angry.
You don't get it. They're gone. We need to forget them.
But what if we get out? What if the real them is out there? What if they're okay? You said it yourself. They wouldn't want us to give up.
I never said that.
You did! Remember back when we first woke up here? I was crying, and you told me that they want us to find a way out. You told me that. She suddenly sat up, and it made me jump.
Well, let's be real. There's not a damn chance we leave.
But if there
How
is...
can you stop being happy for a day?
Why?
You can't handle anything going wrong. You'll just cry or go, nuh-uh.
I don't do that.
You're doing it now.
Okay, so if we don't try to get out, then we may as well just die.
Didn't you tell me you wanted to die back at that house, Hazel?
Yes, but you told me that I just can't give up. That even though I think there is no way out, we could get out. Why are you so mad and just acting so dumb now?
Dumb? Do you know what the hell I've been through? The ferryman told me.
You met the ferryman? Why didn't you
Can it?
But Ivy then suddenly raised her hand like she was gonna smack me, and I cowered and cried out, "Stop!" I just sat and cowered, waiting for pain to come, but nothing happened. Her voice calmed, still mad, and I looked at her, and her hand was slowly being lowered to her side.
I'm sorry. Just let me sleep, Hazel.
I went to hug her and whispered to her, "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to..." Then she just pushed me away with all her might.
Not now. I'm just tired.
I don't know why, but that was my breaking point. I felt my lips shake, and I began to tear up. I thought you died, Ivy. Can I at least hug you? She just gave me this angry stare.
Let me just sleep, alright?
I began to cry and yell at her.
You hate me. You hate me like you did with Mom and Dad. You never, ever let me try to love you. You push me away every damn time. You stupid villain. You hate me. You jerk. I stormed out of the bedroom and walked down the endless hallway of rooms, tears dripping down my cheeks as I stormed down. My footsteps were loud, gunshots in this empty hallway. The whole time, all I could ponder was Ivy and what she's done to me before we ended up here. All the time she'd bully me and laugh at me, the time she'd hurt me when Mom and Dad weren't looking, or when she'd blame me for things. One time we were at a hotel and there was still a lit cigarette on an ashtray. She decided to be what it'd be like to smoke, so she took a puff and hacked up a lung and a half. When they looked over and saw her holding the cigarette, she said that I was the one who shoved it into her mouth. And I tried to defend myself, but they listened to her. They did that a lot, listening to her over me. My thoughts began to finally slow down when I reached the lobby, finding myself in a dining area. The smell of cooked meat and food taunted my nose. Up against a wall was an area with a bell, low enough for us kids to reach it and ring it. Above the bell was a window for what I assume led to a kitchen of sorts. Near the bell was a sign saying, "For those gluttonous, ding to summon your anchor." I didn't care for its meaning and dinged it. A slithering noise then came from the window, and above it was another man of wax, like the bell one, but in a butler suit. Above his lip was this darker little lump of wax, like a fake mustache, the ones you'd see in fairs and towns. His appearance made me jump, but not like I thought I would. Was I just getting used to seeing weird things? His voice left his wax lips, gasping just like the bellman. As a matter of fact, he sounded just like him.
"What does thy soul crave?"
I stuttered to think of a random food item I liked, but I just sighed and asked, "What do you have?"
"Anything you wish to make your anchor with."
Anything?
"Anything."
Can I get a big chocolate cake?
"Icing."
Sure." He turned around and I could hear something. Some mix of the sounds of pot and pans barking against each other, knives giving kisses to wooden cutting boards, and the singing of liquids being stirred. Soon he came back and handed me a plate. His limbs literally had to stretch to reach my height from the window. On the plate was all the utensils I'd need, and this giant cake.
"Tie your anchor well."
Thank you? I think. He nodded and just melted down, like a faucet being switched off, along with the loud clunk that you'd hear from the sink being turned off as well, but I believe it was just his clothes. I went over to one of the many empty tables. I was the only person here. I looked around and felt scared. Whenever I try to eat, I try to do it with family or friends. I was always just scared to eat alone, and I can't figure out why. So I just ate, the only sounds being the music from some sort of distant source and the sounds of my own chewing. The cake itself tasted amazing, though. It was just like the cake we get on our birthdays. Our mom and dad would go get the neighbors. They'd pay them, actually, to make me and Ivy cakes. They said it was cheaper than making it from scratch themselves. I felt memories of the arbors come back to my mind before they lost their faces like Mom and Dad. The sound of footsteps suddenly came from the entrance to the dining area, and there I saw a girl, a little older than me, but younger than Ivy. Her skin was dark and contrasted against my pale hands that were in my vision. She had a torn-up white sweater, its bottom torn, showing the top of her pants and some of her stomach. On her wrist was a little bracelet, and it was made of all these little beads of all sorts of colors. But when her eyes shifted to my face, she suddenly hid it. And when my eyes shifted to her face, I also realized how terrible she looked. Her face was covered in dirt or some type of gunk. Her hair was all over the place. She looked at me like a kicked puppy. Her eyes then jumped to the space where the butler man was, and I watched her repeat my actions, being confused, ringing the bell, nearly screaming, getting food after some odd questions, and sitting down. She decided to go ahead and sit in front of me, and my eyes met hers. Her eyes told stories she didn't need to utter. She lived days without food, days without warmth, and somewhere that was cold out in this nowhere. She dug into her food, taking some bites, and then spoke to me.
Who are you?
I'm Hazel. You?
Lola. Lola Copperspoon.
That's a pretty name. Why are you here?
I don't know. Why are you?
I paused and looked over to the hole where the butler was.
What, did he take you here?
The wax man? No.
Wax man? Who's the wax man?
The bellboy? She tilted her head, still not understanding what I meant. Did, the ferryman take you?
Who?
The man in the trench coat, long, melty face, empty eyes. She shook her head and took a long breath.
I just remember going through a doorway to get out of that place.
What place? She looked down at her torn sweater, and I realized something I was too dumb to notice earlier. On her stomach, which she was covering at that time, was 3 large scars. I think I might have still been able to see some blood ooze out of them. They were very fresh. She went ahead and adjusted herself and tried her best to give me a smile.
Want to hear a story, Hazel?
Sure. She stared off to the hole where the bellman was for a second, and finally spoke after a sniffle.
That long-faced man took me here. He promised me I could find my sister, and seeing as the only person I'm living with is my deadbeat drunk dad in a rotting apartment, I figured it's better than nothing. So, I took his hand, he spoke something in some language, and I woke up in this... I don't know how to put it. It was an apartment building, I think, but building. Saying it's a building feels like an understatement. I remember waking up on a balcony, and I was surrounded by this dark, cloudy sky. The balcony itself was made out of concrete, only concrete, and I peeked over the balcony, and I saw what had to have been thousands, millions maybe, of other balconies on this building that stretched down in every direction, to my left, right, above me, beneath me. Whatever these balconies were attached to seemed to go on forever. I think some of the building bent like a corner, but maybe it was just where I couldn't see any further. It was just impossibly large, whatever this building was. I got up and tried crying out for my sister or my dad, but no one came to me. So I did the only thing I could think of and just went into the room the balcony was connected to. The apartment itself was also made of pure concrete, but it had rare bits of furniture. Well, furniture is an overstatement. The prisoners outside of the counties out in coastal caves get better furniture than this. It was just bed frames of metal so rusty I thought I'd get tinnitus just looking at it. Wooden outlines of couches and chairs with all of the fabric gone. A fridge that was more brown and ick than proper metal with no doors. But everything else in that room was just concrete. Concrete ceilings, concrete floors, concrete walls. They weren't even different colors, they were all the same color of gray. It was just depressing. I eventually left that room and entered the hallway of this apartment building, and I looked up to the room number. It was 19 million something. This place was ungodly large. Hazel, if a place this big existed, it would have had to have been the concrete of 10 of our own planets. I felt myself hyperventilate now, thinking about how I was going to get down. Was there an exit on this floor, or would I have to go all the way down? And how long would that take? I tried to just keep going to forget, thinking, this is just a dream. And down the hall was a corner, and it bent into a source of light. And as I walked to it, I walked onto something made of wood, and it crunched. And a laugh came from where the hole was, and I froze. I called out for the source, but it just laughed. I slowly tiptoed over to the corner to see what the light was or who was laughing, but when I went over, I saw something horrible. The light itself was coming from a TV. The TV itself only had static, but the laughing came from a teenage woman with no face. Her face was covered in a zigzag of stitches and string. She had nothing resembling a face. The only thing left was eyebrows. In the middle of the stitching, in the middle of her face, was this point where it all connected. And there, the stitching went into the ceiling. And it seemed like there was some sort of nail possibly keeping it in the ceiling. The weirdest part was right where the nail was in the ceiling looked like dried blood. Like poking this nail into the ceiling made it bleed. The teenage woman herself was shaking and twitching, and every twitch, this disgusting crunch came from somewhere in her bones. And the only reason I could see her was because the TV light was shining on her. But as my eyes adjusted to the darkness, I saw that behind her was even more people. Some of them were adults. Some of them, they had to have been at least 9 at the most. Their faces were all the same, just stitches connecting to a middle point with nothing left of their face but eyebrows. And then I realized where the sound of laughing came from earlier. The faces, it seemed like the stitching would kind of open. You could barely see it in the dark, but I swear I could see the stitching open just a little. And every time their stitching would open, random sounds would come out along with just laughs. And when those laughs and noises would come out, it felt like 1,000 people talking out of one throat. Except that throat was just a little stitching hole. When you got close enough to these people, it sounded like 12 people yelling at you. It was just loud when you got close. Realizing there was nothing I could do for these people, I just left and tried running through the halls, staring at the door numbers go down by 1 digit at their very end, realizing even more that I'm never gonna get out of this place. I didn't have a clock on me to tell me how long I walked, Hazel, but I think I walked for a few days through that place. There were some bits of food, bits as generous. It was just the remains of potato chip bags and the remains of canned food. I did find out that the occasional room with a sink did actually have running water, so that was nice, so I knew I wouldn't die of dehydration, but I really thought a few times I was gonna starve to death. And every room that I entered had the same few things. The remains of furniture, maybe a TV with some static, and more of those people stitched to the ceiling. All of them leaking out sounds of pain or joy. The pain and joy of entire towns coming out of one person. After wandering around for who knows how long, I saw this woman. This woman who was... she had to be 8 feet tall. She wore a long skirt and her face... God. She had one eye, and her mouth and other eye were just skin. She had 2 large stitches across her face, one right under her nose, the other on the left side of her head. She was tying up a little boy's face. The little boy was wearing a dirty shirt and squirming. I realized I had walked in on the boy as he was already dead. He was trying to scream, but it was so muffled, you could barely hear it. The woman had this large roll of stitching that was attached to a small bit of wood at her side on a leather belt. The roll of stitching had to be the size of my foot. She kept using the needle attached to the stitching to tie up the boy's face before placing the string to the ceiling. She put her needle back into some part of her belt, and her bony hands fumbled into a fanny bag near her back, and she pulled out a large metal spike, just like the ones I'd seen in the ceiling before. She used some scissors to cut the stitching, wrap the stitching around the spike, and then rammed the spike into the ceiling with her long hands and long arms. It seemed so easy to her, like she could do this all day. And as she stuck the nail to the ceiling, blood gushed out of it. There was blood in the ceiling. I don't know why, but there was blood in there, like this building was a living thing. Maybe she was feeding it by doing this. The idea grossed me out and just made me want to barf. She went ahead and just left the spike in the ceiling and let the boy sit there. I felt myself shaking with fear. She was doing this to little kids, and I knew she would do this to me if she found me. I knew it. I saw her eyes turn, and I thought she was going to spot me peeking in at this, so I bolted back and hid. And then after a while, I realized she hadn't moved, so I peeked again and saw her admiring her work. She took her hands, clapping them together, and put them up to her face, like she was a painter who just finished the most breathtaking art ever known. And I noticed something I didn't notice earlier because of just how terrified I was. She was letting out these muffled moans or muffled sounds. It was hard to describe. She was just sitting there until a closet in the same room where she was doing this busted open and a little girl had jumped out and started running while sobbing. I couldn't get a good look at her, but I saw that she was dark-skinned like me and had a gray dress, and the last thing I remember seeing my sister wear was a gray dress. So I assumed it was my sister. The lady got out of her trance and started chasing down the girl. I stuck close to her, trying to stay near who I thought was my sister. The girl and the lady ran in random patterns of left and right, dodging empty and desolate rooms, if you could even call them rooms. I kept going until it looked like me and the lady both lost track of her. The lady then went ahead and started going through rooms, flipping tables and chairs in an attempt to find her. Her skin-choked mouth letting out croaks and groans of what sounded like anger, and her one eye, whenever I caught a glimpse of it, was twitching with ungodly anger. And I just sat back, watching her, just with her anger-filled limbs shaking more and more with each flip of furniture. And after what felt like ages, she seemed to give up and stomped her foot out of anger and bolted off into a random direction. As the lady left, I heard the sobbing come back, and it was that girl. I bolted to the source to find her, and when I did, she was... It turned out, when the lady was going through all those rooms, she did find the girl. And now she was just like the rest of those people. The girl's neck was broken. The lady, trying to tie up her face, apparently broke her neck. And it made me realize why the lady was angry. She ruined this girl. I didn't even hear the girl scream. She snapped her neck so fast that I don't even know if the girl knew she was dying. And I just stood there, seeing this girl who might have been my sister for all I knew, I think, just hanging there. And I fell to my knees and cried. I failed to save this girl, and a part of me thinks it wasn't my sister. It was just another girl in a gray dress, and I mean, it's been years since my sister went missing, so, maybe it's just this poor little baby who got lost here like me, but I felt like I had lost my sister a second time. And maybe it was, but I'd like to think she's still out there. But eventually, I heard the lady's footsteps clanging towards me, getting louder with each stomp. I ducked into a little cupboard and tried to stop crying, but Hazel, you know when you get those hiccups while you cry? I had those, and I believe she was able to hear it. But I tried to hold my breath and waited till it sounded like her footsteps were a little bit far away from the cupboard. And then I was going to try to make a run for it. And eventually I did, but as I opened the cupboard, she was already standing and waiting for me. She knew I was in there. She was just waiting. And when she saw me, she twitched, and then that scream. She screamed the loudest I've ever heard anything scream. Her face shook and shivered, and before I knew it, the long stitching underneath her nose opened up to reveal that was her mouth. Her mouth was stitched shut, and she screamed so loud and so angrily, the stitching tore. I don't know what she screamed in anger, joy, something, but I knew she was gonna kill me, just like she did to that other little girl. So I ran, and I ran as far as my little feet could take me, peeking into rooms as I was running, catching the same thing I'd seen over and over. People inside the ceiling with stitches on their face and the remains of furniture. Each of those people was stitching in their faces, leaking out sounds, like a cry in a pillow, quiet but loud enough to hear if you were close. I don't know how long I ran, but I knew my feet were pins and needles by the end. And eventually, I managed to see a stairway that went up. This was the first time I'd seen anywhere that wasn't just this one level. So I went ahead and, with no idea where else to go, ran up. And I went up and reached the top, but there were no lights up there and I couldn't see anything. There was some light, but my eyes would have to adjust. But by the time my eyes had adjusted, I slipped and realized what this room was, or what it was full of. It was covered in this ink or tar on the floor. It almost looked like clay, I think. And in the room were these large metal spikes poking out of the floor and out of little piles of clay. As I slipped, I tried to catch my fall on one of the spikes, but I ended up just having my own stomach scrape against them, slashing open my skin and leaving a trail of blood. I tried to crawl away, sobbing and screaming in pain. I could barely even crawl in the first place with all this gunk on the floor. It took all my energy to just turn around. And when I did, there was the lady, slowly approaching with a grin on her disgusting face. And she spoke to me in a voice that sounded like a girl who had to still sit in a booster seat. This child's voice out of this demon then said,
"A new friend. Hooray."
I tried to crawl away. I even called out for my sister and sobbed out my father's name. And I just sobbed, thinking I was gonna die. But then a bright light came from behind me in this long, disgusting arm. And I think it was that wax man. I grabbed on, not knowing what else to do. They yanked me, and I ended up here.
Lola stared at her wound, grabbing it. The sight of her wound made my appetite shrink, and I ate the cake a little bit slower. I'm so sorry to hear that, Lola. You mentioned a sister? She let out a sniffle, and I could see that her eyes were wet.
Hazel, I lost my sister some time ago. And before I woke up here, and before the ferryman took me, I was actually trying to kill myself. You know that bridge that leads into the counties and out to the coastal village? I tried to jump off it and pray it would let me see her again. I didn't tell you that's what I was trying to do because I didn't want to sound weak. God. Oh, because we look... God, I miss her so much.
She looked at me. The dam holding back her tears was almost breaking. I have a sister too, Lola, but we just had a fight, and I just didn't want to be with her. She started to cry now, her tears softening the food underneath her.
Hazel, tell you love her. Because the last thing I told my sister was that I hope she gets hit by a car. So tell her you love her.
She sat there, crying for a long time. But eventually, ever so slowly, she gained back her composure. It felt awkward eating my cake now. A girl was crying and I just sat there eating like I was watching one of the movies at the circus theaters. After what felt like too long, a voice came from the speakers that sat in the top 4 corners of the room.
Feeling dirty? Spill some juice on yourself. Smell bad? We have a shower just across from the dining hall. Go cleanse your soul now.
Lola looked at me and then looked at her dirty, torn up clothes.
Well, I may not be able to fix my clothes, but I can at least feel cleaner.
I went ahead and took a whiff of my own armpit and thought I might gag. I never thought how bad we must smell in this place, how long we haven't bathed. So I decided to go to the showers too. Well, let's go, Lola.
Alrighty.
And so we headed off to the showers, hoping to get rid of my filthy stench. This large room with many shower heads, but unlike those old showers back then, we had little walls to go ahead and give us some privacy. There was also a small little thin door with a latch so no one could enter while we showered. Lola went ahead and entered one of the showers and threw her clothes to the doorway right next to it, leaving them lazily on the ground near her. If she at all walked on them when she got out, they would be soaked. I took a little more care. I went ahead and checked if anybody was nearby before taking it all off and putting them on a small bench. I slowly entered and turned the knob, and for the first time in what felt like ever, I felt warm water slam into my skin and clean my hair. I realized we'd been here for so long, I'd actually grown my hair a little. Now it was peeking a tiny bit onto my shoulders and the corner of my eyesight. I swore when I was showering I could smell the grease in my hair, and I felt like I could feel it drip down onto the tile and drain below. It felt like I had this weight in the back of my mind lifted, like I was being spared of something, or maybe it was the weight of the literal dirt and gunk on me. I felt like I was back at home for a split second, like I was in the tub at Mom and Dad's. Mom watching TV as Dad cut up some crab for crab salad dinner, while Ivy was in the yard playing hopscotch or jump rope. I would be in the tub, thinking of me and my friend's next little draw-off, as we called it. Maybe we could see who could draw the best unicorn when the teacher wasn't looking. And then I heard Lola cough in the shower next to me, and realized I'm still here. Still in this nowhere. After a long moment of just enjoying the warm water, I decided I was clean now. I turned off the water, dried myself off, and put my clothes back on. And I realized that most of my stench wasn't even from me, but my clothes. The smell of everything that my clothes have touched reeked loudly. The smell from the remains of the zoo, the smell of the blood from the fake kids, the smell of ash from the village. It was just this soup of stench flooding my nostrils anytime I put my nose right near my clothing. The smell of soap that I had used to clean myself was trying to fight back, but it was a losing battle. As I was wrapping up and putting my shoes on, I heard Lola come out, and I kept my eyes focused to give her privacy. Eventually, she got her clothes on, and then she got in front of me, and her frown was now a tiny smile. Not a full happy one, but she was no longer somber. She tilted her head and gave me a look of something.
Hey, since we've got the time, when I came here, I heard that there's going to be a play in the theater. You want to go see it?
Oh, sure. She nodded and headed out, not even waiting for me to tie my laces. As I left the bathroom, I heard the sound of mumbles. It was Ivy and Lola talking.
I don't want her to think about that. I get it. It's hard to explain to a little-in like her. Yeah, Oh, Hazel!
She bolted up and hugged me, and I slowly hugged her back, feeling scared. She was just about to hit me earlier, and now she's chipper. I looked at her, her eyes still bloodshot and still tired.
I'm so sorry about earlier. I'm tired. Wanna go watch that play?
Oh, sure.
Cool.
Let's... Ivy stopped herself as some footsteps came from behind. It was a nurse, I think, wearing the dress and hat and all. But just like the man earlier who offered food, they looked like the bellboy, just in a costume. Its voice leaked out of its waxy lips.
Miss Lola, you're covered in blood, and your stomach, that cut is horrid. Please come with me, ma'am.
But I was gonna go see the play.
The play can wait, darling. Your wounds need attention now.
But...
Ma'am, your wounds could get infected and hurt you so much worse than they're hurting you now. Please, Miss Lola, come with me.
Okay, just please make it fast so I can maybe catch the play.
Lola turned over to me and Ivy and whispered.
I never told her my name.
The nurse was still nodding, seemingly not realizing that we were talking about her. The nurse's smile cracked a little bit and grew a little bit bigger. She went ahead and took Lola's hand, and the two of them left down to a corridor. But I swore that corridor wasn't there last I looked. Did it just show up all of a sudden? My mind was snapped out of the question when Ivy tapped at my side. She wore a tired smile now, and her bloodshot eyes were slowly regaining their color.
I think the play is that old story about the witch and kids. Ham and... I forgot.
I forgot to... ham and gravy, or...
Let's stop talking about food before I get hungry.
She stuck her hand out, and I was a little caught off guard. After so long, I forgot what it was like to have a big sister. Someone to keep me safe, to protect me from whatever could lie ahead. It felt nice. We entered the theater. Its entrance had a giant sign with those old masks. The theater was well lit. Well, enough to see the floor, but barely the walls. If my shoulder hadn't accidentally tapped a wall, I would have assumed this place was just one giant empty space. We took some seats near the front, and it was empty and cold. The room had a chill to it, and I saw Ivy shiver. I wasn't going crazy. This place really was just cold. A sudden and loud pop came from our left, and in came the cook from earlier. He rolled out one of those little popcorn carts, came up to us, and without even speaking, quickly served up 2 big buckets of popcorn. I was still a little full from eating cake, and so while I was just nibbling away at it, I looked at Ivy and saw her dragging handfuls into her mouth and not even swallowing. Hey, Ivy, I ate some food earlier. You can have this.
Sure?
Of course. You've kept me safe. Only fair I try to return the favor? She nodded and slowly put the bucket next to the empty seat near her. The sound of footsteps began to flood the room. I turned and saw what had to have been dozens of kids. Some of them looked like us. Ragged clothing, dirty faces, eye bags of a person who can't sleep or can't wake up. In this place, and it was hard to tell because of how dark it was and how quickly I glanced over at them, but I swore some of the kids had still faces. Like they had this look that didn't shift or move, and it was odd. Like they were just dolls. Because some of them, when I caught a glimpse, didn't have that look. Maybe it was just the light hitting them. After all, the oddest angle can make even the handsomest of a man look disgusting. As I went to go turn back to double check, the lights in the room clicked off. It was like the theater knew I was trying to look back. It was all just pitch black for a moment. And then a deeper and loud click came from the stage. The lights of the stage flickered on, and the stage, that was just empty when I saw it originally, now had a crude candy house of cardboard and paint on it. From the top of the stage came these 2 long arms of the same wax I've grown accustomed to. Buried into the hands were puppet strings and pieces of wood, and from the side, 2 little puppets creeped out. Their limbs jolted to life as the speakers squeaked awake, like the speakers were an alarm for them to go to get to school. A voice narrated through crackles as the puppets went ahead and performed its story, their joints creaking with every single little movement.
Welcome, dear little ones. We are here to give you a grand show. We are here to tell you the story of Hansel and Gretel, a boy and a girl who, once helping their elder father hunt, now found themselves lost in the woods. The trees sang the wind's song. The leaves danced around them and gathered in parties on the ground. As they wandered, looking for their father, Gretel began to tear up. "Mother," cried Hansel. "Father," cried Gretel. Gretel felt tears prick at her eyes. She fell, and Hansel came to her side. "It'll be okay. We'll find him. He can't be far." The 2 held hands and walked through the woods, but soon night was falling upon the forest, and the whistling of the trees fell to the low hum of crickets. The 2 wept, fearing they'd become the meal for which child of nature had an empty plate. A wolf, a fox, a lost hunter hound, a bear, who knew what lurked behind the oak? As the cold air of the moon flooded the forest and swung around the roots of ancient timber, a light became visible. The 2 went to it, hoping it was their home, but when they got closer, it was no house, but a house of candy. Candy cane fences, gumdrops decor, gingerbread-like wood, and licorice supports. Windows the color of solidified honey. As the 2 approached, they could feel their stomachs cry for food. The 2 looked every way to see if someone was near. Hansel went to go and bite a fence, but the door to the house swung open, and there a lady stood. "Welcome, little ones. Are you lost? Hungry? Scared? Come in, I'll help you. I have everything you need." The lady had green, sickly skin of grass mid-fall. Her nose was abnormally long, the length of a rotted shoe. She wore a black dress and a hat that bent like a wilting flower. The 2 kids, scared for what could lie beyond the trees and tall grass, saw no other option. With a shiver and a gulp, the 2 entered the abode. The ceiling to the floor looked like it could cause a cavity if licked. Ceiling like dark chocolate, tables and swirly candy patterns, even the sheets on chairs looked like candy mid-making. The witch shepherded them to a mint table with sugar-filled meals. The woman snapped her fingers, and the 2 chairs at the table flew back, allowing the kids to sit in them. They jumped at the screech of the candy chairs against the cocoa floors. But soon they calmed down and sat. The lady nodded and bowed. As she did, the chairs slid again, but up to the table, allowing them to feast. "Go on, feast. You look so hungry." With slight doubt, the children began to eat, gorging on the seemingly endless sweets and treats laid upon the table. The whole time the lady had her hands behind her back, giggling with glee and a smile that went beyond her ears. As they ate, Gretel let out a slight whimper. Do you know where our family could be? We got lost, and we don't know where our father is." The lady's smile suddenly switched to a somber frown. Her eyes scanned the room before speaking. "I don't know where he is, but it's late out. If I take him to you, the creatures of the night will eat us. So for the night, I ask you to sleep here. But when the sun rises, I'll take you home." She giggled at Gretel and Hansel as their smiles of glee and hope shifted into unease. The lady took her hands out from behind her back, and like a magic trick, she had 2 cups of hot cocoa. The kids drank it, remembering how they dried their throats from the yelling for their distant father's ears. But not long after sipping the warm liquid, Their eyes felt heavy. Hansel's eyes nearly shut, but the sound of Gretel screaming as she began to vomit her own guts out in screaming pain snapped her out of it. It hurts, Father, Mother, save me. She choked out as blood flooded her vocal cords. Hansel felt the pain come too soon, and as he could feel his own insides fight themselves, blood leaked out his nose and eyes as his guts left out through his mouth. He tried to cry, but the feeling of his kidney blocking his windpipe made it almost impossible.
Before this point even, Ivy had blocked the play from my eyes. I could only catch glimpses of it. The dolls during the scene were actually bleeding, like some sort of goo was leaking out of them. The more it leaked, the more the strings seemed to struggle to keep the puppets up. I had barely been listening to the play at this point, and was more focused on the sounds of squelching and the ever-growing static of the speakers.
She cried like all children, those rotten little vermin that flood the damn streets, those rotten little things that cry for more even after being given all they could dream. Those little rats, I'd strangle them if I could. Watch the life leave their eyes as their faces go blue. The joy I get from children in pain is amazing. Watching them finally earn what they deserve. Watch as those little rotten bastards should get what they receive. But you do it anywhere else and the parents defend those rotten things of filth. They defend those rotten carcasses that leech off them, eating their food and money and time. I would kill more if I could, but my hands can only do so much. Only so many eyes can my thumbs gouge. Only so many teeth can I break. So many rotten necks I can squeeze out. I will burn them all of them. Those rotten creatures, their parents, their homes, the city, if I can.
Ivy moved her hand as there was a loud clunk behind us. There, with the lights now back on, I saw that some of the kids that walked in here weren't real kids, but dolls too. Not all, but some of them were these dolls with fake faces. Those dolls began to have their shells break and crack, and the same goo that was on the puppets on the stage leaked out. The dolls leaped onto the normal kids and began to leech off them, their gooey hands and faces sticking to the normal kids like they were melting onto them. It was like watching a clay toy try to eat an action figure. Ivy pulled my arm and bolted me up.
We have to go, now!
As we ran out, we saw from the entrance Lola. She had a stitched-up version of her sweater and even cleaner skin. A new fear was in her eyes, though, that stuck out like a lighthouse in fog.
Ivy, Hazel, here!
Ivy and I ran through the theater to Lola, and as we did, I looked back at the stage, and a giant mouth was starting to break through the play. Like a beast was awoken by the screams of the angry voice on the speakers. Maybe that was the one speaking. The outside seemed fine compared to the theater, only the lights now dimmer. All three of us leaned and rested on a table in the dining hall and looked at each other.
What the hell is going on? I don't know, Ivy. I was with that nurse lady and she started to try to like eat me after she stitched me up and she...
The doors flew open and there sat those dolls. The parts of them that were wooden or plastic were splintered where the goo leaked out, and in the proper light of the dining hall I could see it wasn't really goo. It was more of this wax, just like what the workers here are made of. And from the one that opened the door, a voice left their shattered head.
We need
The doll that yelled that didn't even finish taking one step before Ivy yanked my hand. I went to go look for Lola and saw that she was running in a different direction. Lola was running to the kitchen of the dining hall, probably looking for a weapon. I would have yelled for her, but fear and dread made me forget to do it. The paths and turns to our room felt miles long now. What was once just a slightly long walk was the run of a lifetime. I couldn't tell if maybe the halls were actually getting longer, or it just felt like forever because behind us was this army of the dolls. As we ran, I looked back and could see those things were very, very close to us. Their arms stretched like a sock with a pebble in it. Their mouths like a bag in the wind, tied to a neck-shaped pole. Splinters poked into the wax as they ran to us. Drips of the wax and those loose flakes of wood left a trail behind them. Their mouths let out gasps and groans of pain, like living was hurting them. My feet were numb by the time we finally got to our room and slammed the door shut behind us. Our room was this place of safety and calmness, a place of peace where nothing could cause harm. It was just a temporary safe room before the horde got in. Ivy threw her back onto the door and looked at me with fear flooding her eyes.
Find a weapon! Anything! Break my dolls if you gotta!
I looked around, my eyes seeing nothing but dumb toys and dolls that wouldn't do a damn thing to them. But then I spotted my old umbrella, the one I used to keep myself dry on the way to little sleepovers. I grabbed it and stood near the door, like a town ball player ready to swing their bat. But then from behind, a vent in the corner of our room started to click. After a few taps, it flew open. A doll like the others dragged its waxy limbs and face out and made a dash for Ivy. I flew in front of her and swung the umbrella into it. The umbrella sunk into its waxy forehead and it fell. I got on top of it to try to keep it pinned down, trying to keep Ivy safe from it so she could hold the door up just a little longer. I tried to use the umbrella more to beat it, but it was like hitting mud. It didn't do anything to the creature. I think I even heard it laugh. My arms got so tired that I just eventually threw the umbrella to the side and used my own hands to keep it pinned. I could hear Ivy behind me whimpering now, and my mind raced with the horrific image of my corpse. I truly thought we were doomed. The sight of my body made my heart beat like a woodpecker. The whole world around me was just this creature, this disgusting face that had eyes barely poking out of these large holes, a mouth that lets out sounds of a soul in hell into this world. A gateway of the sounds of pain for us normal people. I could practically hear Ivy scream in fear, as the scream of loss turned into her own scream of death. As I had it pinned down, some sweat that had formed on my face long ago had dripped off. I paid no mind to it at first, the fear in my veins overriding any care for being gross. But I realized as my sweat landed onto the creature, the wax hardened. Like the goo was lighter and looked cracked. Like the water made it dry up. In a state of curiosity and primal fear, I spat onto it, and the spit landed, and sure enough, more of its face was lighter and now cracked. I thought what was once goo, and then what was once wax, was just clay. It was like when we were younger and we would make clay toys, spill our OJ onto it, and it'd fall apart not too long after. With its skin hardened and cracked, I slammed my knuckles into it, and the face shattered like a window. I could feel teeth poke at my hand, but the fear and anger in my brain overrode any care for pain. I looked back at Ivy, her face covered in a drape of hopelessness.
Ivy, we need to get them wet. What?
Just trust me. I booked it over to my rucksack and pulled out some water bottles. With trembling hands, I twisted the cap off of two of them, and I turned to Ivy and yelled,
I'll throw this water at them, then we'll beat them to death. But
just do it, okay? Ivy nodded, hesitated, and then flung the door open. For a split second, I froze, and time seemed to as well. I just stared at them for at least a second, but that second felt like eternity. The clay skin over wooden suits, eyes buried behind piles of clay, mouths a speaker for the sounds of torture of sinners. I snapped out of it in less than a second and threw the water onto them. They cowered as I did, letting out hiss-like moans. Their skin turned pale white and cracked as they tried moving around and getting out of the splash's way. But before those things could even realize what happened, me and her both went for them. But Ivy ended up being the one that got them, because when I looked over, she had pulled a gun out of her rucksack. When did she get a gun? Much like most things in this world, it was twice our size, and even though it was a revolver, it took both her hands holding it like a shotgun to get a good aim. And then the loudest sound I've ever heard flooded the world. The bullet shattered the head of one creature and split another in half at their chest. Ivy stood back, her ears probably ringing too, and by the time we had processed what happened, we saw that there was 5 or 6 more of them. All of them screaming at us.
Bastard! Just take my doll.
I won't do it again. I ran to Ivy and hugged her. I said no words. There were no words to help us. Nothing left to do but accept fate. We're going to die in a mock-up of our old room. Just like where this nightmare started, in this room. A loop that will just keep going, maybe? Maybe it's just an endless nightmare we can't wake up from. Maybe we'll wake up in a new layer of whatever this cursed world is. But right as I began to feel tears leak out of my eyes, a familiar voice called out from the hallway.
Hey!
The dolls turned, and a flaming bottle landed on them. The fire almost instantly lit up the nearby area and even some of the carpet in our fake bedroom. The creatures bubbled and popped and melted in front of us, their screams like the sound of children being beaten en masse. And between the crackling and screams, a few words were whispered out between the smoke.
Stop it, Dad. Lana, please wake up.
Eventually, the screams subsided and they finally collapsed. And as they did, sprinklers in the hallway went off. The water killed off any smoke or fire from the makeshift firebomb thrown by someone. That someone soon showed themselves. Lola. She was covered in a bit of dirt, but she looked fine minus that.
Alright, girls? Not here. I'm a little hurt, but I'm not dying. How's your sister? How's Hazel?
As she asked us, she waved us on, and in her other hand, where the firebomb wasn't, was a small meat cleaver. She went to go in the hallway and keep talking, but she stopped and slowly backed into our room.
What the...
Behind us was a loud bang. We all turned and saw the walls to our room had collapsed, and behind them, eyes and teeth. Each of them were poking out of the clay I've grown accustomed to seeing by now. Ivy had this look of familiarity to her face, like she'd seen this before. Ivy took my hand and yanked me out of the room. I went to go yank my rucksack and almost yelled at Ivy, but I realized it was in her other hand. We finally got out and watched the doorway that once led to our room turn into a hole of gnashing teeth and eyes. I hadn't even realized by now that the sprinklers finally quit flowing. After a moment, my eyes glanced at the halls, and I understood why Lola was at a loss for words. I don't know how to describe it. I saw that each of the rooms in the doorway no longer had doors or rooms, but clay poking out of the doorways, and from the clay were floating bodies of kids. And on each was a string of clay connecting to some limb. Their whole face, a part of their leg, their pinky finger, and this string connected them to the clay in the doorway. From the walls of the clay, gushing out, was some whispers and sobs, each with the pain of a crowd that saw a kitten die on stage. After gathering our new bearings, and Ivy had adjusted her gun to fit her arms right, we began to walk through the halls. The hotel was no longer what it was mere moments ago. The walls were peeling, the floor was cracking, and under what was once carpet was chain link, like the fences trapping kids in playgrounds. Inside the walls, or at least when I could see them, due to the flickering lights, was more clay. It was throbbing, twitching, bubbling up and popping. The cracks I saw earlier that leaked out this clay were now gashes. Paper cuts turned to axe wounds. The clay had these strings or lines poking out, like what we saw earlier, but not connected to anybody. They looked like when water drips and forms a long stream, but upside down, like they were fingers looking for someone to hug, a child to grab and pull into the clay. The hotel felt like it was old. I don't mean like abandoned and rotten from a few decades. I mean like my grandpa wasn't even an idea by the time this place began to rot. Like this rot was a corpse's bones being played with the puppet-like strings of wax, a body being treated like a toy that has lost its parts. Those parts were just glued back on with this disgusting clay. It took a little bit for us to realize that the hallway was now longer than it was earlier. Where we should have reached the entrance area, we were just still in this hallway. The hallway itself seemed to have these levels of ruin. As we got through, some parts were terribly broken. The floor under us was nothing but chain link, while other times it was only barely visible through some cracks in the carpet. And this level of rot and decay would ebb and flow like a tide. The numbers above the doors were not even numbers now, just scribbles, lines and streaks that might resemble a number if you squint hard enough. And every single doorway was just like the ones we saw at the start of this walk, blocked up by clay with eyes and teeth poking out, a string of clay and the mass attached to a floating child. Boys and girls with clay strings seeming to be the one thing keeping them from floating into the moldy ceiling tiles. As we walked, Lola stopped and looked at one of the kids. What's wrong?
Hazel, their faces... Jesus.
Me and Ivy peeked at their faces. It looked like a child's attempt at a face when given a half-dead pencil. Their faces looked like they had cloth of skin covering a part of their face. This said cloth blending and merging into those clay tendrils, pinning them to the clay. What wasn't covered was the deadest expression a human can make. Eyes rolled back, mouth half open. I swore one of their faces had lines of dried tears. The walk became uneasy after that. The blend of the whispers of the clay mouths, the rotten halls, the floating corpses having their faces linked to these clay tendrils. It all made this place feel like it was a twisted toy house. Toys for an evil girl who wants to make her friends suffer and hurt. I looked at Ivy. She had the gun in her arms pushed up a little bit, like she was ready to shoot one of those floating bodies if they even twitched a finger at us. Lola this whole time had her butcher's knife ready. She was sitting there like she was ready to cut a piece of meat that was in front of her that never showed up. Meanwhile, all I had was my fingers. I felt so useless next to them, like I was just watching TV again. Back when I'd see those ads and shows of girls that were pretty, that had their entire lives planned out and they were ready to go when they left their home. Meanwhile, I always felt so worthless compared to them. They had all those fancy dresses and rings. All I had was some little bracelets my mama made me. Then I would go swimming out in those public places, and I would always feel fat. Like I was a fat, bloated corpse swimming with normal girls. All these memories, all these thoughts made me start to cry and weep. Ivy turned to me and talked in a tone of concern I hadn't heard in quite some time.
Hazel, what's going on? Hey, Hazel, is something up? Do you need me and Ivy to help you? Are you hurt?
I'm so... I just began to practically sob now, nearly falling. All these feelings I've felt in all my life were at their maximum power, alongside with the fear and dread and guilt and terror that we'll never get home. I want to go home. This place was fine. It was okay. Why? What did we do? Why am I here? I hate this. I hate it here. Ivy put the gun down and kneeled next to me.
Shh, I understand. I'm so tired too. I feel like we haven't slept. Like when our eyes shut, time just passes. My mind doesn't reset, my body doesn't feel any less sore. I just feel like the clock sped up without my permission. I don't know why you're...
Ivy cut herself off, gasping, and a dread filled her eyes. Ivy? What's wrong?
Don't worry, I'll tell you when...
The sound of a phone ringing came from a room ahead of us. Lola went first, and we followed soon after. The ringing came from this one door, one that seemed to be a bit more odd. The walls around it were less like fancy decay of a hotel, but of a basement wall. The doorway was this rusty metal, and the remains of hinges hung on for dear life to the doorway. Into the doorway was a room, seemingly eternal in size. There was no left, right, or ceiling, just this large room, with the only wall being the wall that was the entrance. Not too far from the doorway was a hanging phone. The place that the sound was coming from was here. The phone hung onto the cable that seemed to spiral as high as possible. We all went near it, slowly treading to it like each step would activate some mine. We eventually got close enough to answer it, and Lola grabbed the phone and spoke.
Hello?
I wish I told my sweet pea more.
What? Who is this?
Oh, where are my manners? It's your birthday.
Excuse me?
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear. What's your name, darling?
What the hell are
Dear,
you?
what the hell are you? Happy birthday to you.
What are you?
Happy 32nd birthday.
I'm 17.
No, you aren't. You know this.
The whole room was silent now. The sounds of the whispers and groans outside were the only thing stopping my ears from just ringing. After some awkward glances, Ivy yanked the phone out of Lola's hands.
Who the hell are you? What do you want, you sicko?
I just want to stop by like the old days. You know, friend.
Friend, I don't know you.
You do. As a matter of fact, I've been there with you since before Hazel could walk and read.
Then what is your name?
Hatred.
What?
What do you love more? The feeling of water in your teeth or bones in your eyes?
I hate water.
Now let's go ahead and give it your favorite little doll.
I could see Ivy tearing up, and seeing this voice make her start to cry made me mad. It was my turn in this hot potato game of yelling into the phone. I yanked it out of her hands. Why are you saying this to my sister? How do you know her name? But better yet, how do you know my name?
There's a fire inside my stomach. It kicks. It was you. Another you. A new you who was never baptized by the bastard girl.
A new me?
There's a man in a coat who can take you to her, who'll pull her teeth, her eyes, her skin off and put yours on that lifeless fetus instead. You'll live a life of joy and peace without the dog that's been there with you since you couldn't form a thought.
Stop with the riddles! Just tell me who you are! The voice was silent now, and after a moment, it finally spoke, before hanging up.
I'm the girl if she was never plunged into the water.
And with that, the phone went silent, and so too did the room. Now that the awkward silence was back, the dread and fear returned too, flooding and drowning my mind, and I couldn't breathe. I was truly drowning in the fear of my own thoughts and pain, and before I could even process it, I fell down as I felt my stomach kick itself.
Darling? You alright, Hazel? Hazel? Hazel, what's wrong?
I feel... I
lost control of my body and puked. As I did, I felt something in my stomach crawl its way out of me. I thought it'd get stuck and choke me, but it managed to creep its way out of my throat. My eyes were shut in pain, so I couldn't see what left me, but I heard Ivy and Lola scream. By the time my eyes were open, I saw I had barfed up a birthday hat.
What the hell?
Ivy came up and began to hold on to me, tapping my back to get a non-existent burp out.
Oh my god, are you okay? Hazel, say something!
I'm just lightheaded. What's going on? Lola kicked the damp and ruined hat to the side and yanked at the phone, yelling into it, but I was too lightheaded and tired to pay attention to what she said. From there, it's a little bit of a blur. I just recall Lola carrying me on my back as Ivy held her gun, traveling down this looping hallway. But eventually, through the blurry memories, I remember that we found a giant hole in the wall. This hole looked like it had been burnt in, like a finger of fire poked through some paper, leaving charred edges in the hole's wake. I tapped Lola's shoulder as I began to finally become conscious again. You can let me down. I think I can walk now.
You sure, darling?
Mm-hmm. Lola let me down, and I was able to get a better glimpse at this room. The room that the hole led to was an operation room. Glass cabinets filled with unknown meds and chemicals, sinks and drawers with unknowns in them, and in the middle was an operation table, and it had nothing on it. But as we began to enter, the lights flickered, and between the flickers, a shaking man was there. But only for a second. Like a TV glitching, and you spot a channel for a blink of an eye, but that blink of an eye was just a man. I couldn't catch much, but I swore that I could see what was a man in a straitjacket, and I don't think he had eyes. But between flickers, I could form some sort of sentence. Ivy pointed her gun at it, her finger itching at the trigger, but Lola came over and lowered the gun down.
Calm down, girl. It's pinned down anyway. Like it could do anything. Lola, listen, you haven't been here as long as me and Hazel. You can't trust anything in this damn place. Alright? So, let's just move and just keep an eye on it at the bare minimum.
We went ahead and snuck our way through the operation room. The whole time, me and Lola just kept eyeing at the man flickering in and out of life itself. Through a door on the other side of the operation room was more hotel-like areas. It was this empty dining hall that I had never even seen earlier. There was a tilted chandelier barely keeping the room away from being called dark. In the empty room was what looked like the remains of clothes. Like people in here who were whisked away and only their suits and dresses stayed. My eyes were glued to what looked like the remains of a cigar on the ground. The cigar was just barely still lit. These people, whoever was here, maybe vanished less than 10 minutes ago. But the walls and the little furniture here was covered in blankets of mold and dust. I went over to the cigar and went to go grab it, but right as I did, a loud cry came from the other side of the room. Mama. It was one of those doll people. It was wearing the suit of the witch from the play. Her hat was completely broken. Half of it was broken at one point with sharp bits of wood, and the other half was what was beneath all the wood, metal supports. Lola got herself ready to use the cleaver on the doll, but the doll came charging head first. It knew its head was broken and was trying to impale Lola. Lola dodged and the doll got stuck into the wall. The dog won't get back up. It won't get out. The dog won't get up. The witch struggled to yank its head out, and after it did, it almost immediately began charging for me now. I dodged it by a few inches. I swore I could feel the fabric on its clothes scratch my torso. It clumsily fell over on a stray heel on the ground. It got back up, but by the time it did, Ivy shot it. The loud, echoing shot was not as deafening in this larger room, but still loud. The shot took off the doll's head, leaving nothing but a stub and bubbling clay there. Lola then gave Ivy this look, not a look of relief, but anger, and began to yell at her.
Ivy, let me get this straight. You have a gun. What is that? 6 bullets, maybe? And you've fired 2? Actually, I used a bullet before I even got here. So
Like that makes it any better?
It was going for my sister. I didn't want to. You have fired 3 bullets in a revolver that has 6. You've wasted half your bullets, you idiot.
Well, I didn't want it to hurt. Lola stomped her foot and stuck her hand out.
Give me the gun. Give me the gun, okay, Ivy?
Ivy moved the gun closer towards herself, like a mother making sure her child wouldn't get hurt.
No. I don't want to lose my sister.
Lola's rage suddenly seemed to snap away and turned into a frown.
I get it. Come on, let's go.
Lola speed walked ahead of us, and I got to Ivy's side. Ivy bent down and whispered to me, her face a little uneasy.
I won't let anything or anyone hurt you. Okay, Hazel?
Okay. We eventually caught up with Lola and found ourselves now in the theater from earlier. We entered from a fire exit which I think wasn't there. I didn't recall seeing it when the hotel was normal. Where once was the stage and the clay mouth biting at nothing was now just rubble and broken wooden supports. there was no sign of the clay anymore. It was like another hotel that took the same fate. The colors were the same, the designs were the same too. It felt like those Randall noodle shops. All of those little noodle shops designed to have the same interior, so when they got bought out, you knew what it used to be. Before I could look at smaller details, I spotted Lola running off, and she was nearly out of the theater room by the time we had stopped studying the place.
Hey, Lola, wait!
I want to get out of here!
Ivy rested her gun in her arms and talked to her in the tone of a tired parent, like when a mom or dad sees her kid do something bad for the third time in a row.
Look, okay, Lola? Me and Hazel have been through our home city in ruin, full of those faceless zombies. We've been through the zoo with a disgusting zookeeper that keeps making kids into dolls. We've been through the countryside with crazy rednecks that have teeth for eyes. Hazel has been to a village full of crazy nut jobs that let crows eat babies. I've been to a tower of flesh and stone. We've dealt with kids that eat flesh. I fought a cowboy with a broken neck so crooked who nearly cut my own head off. We've been here long enough to understand you can't run away. We have to stick together. You've got to go slow. Who knows what's behind that door? A crazy doctor with feet for hands? Some mannequin who eats noses? Who knows? So just slow down. Alright? Ivy, I just want to go home. I don't want to be stuck here like you two.
I now joined the argument.
You think we want to be here? We want to leave. But if we die here, then we can't leave. Hell, I don't even know if there's a way out, but I'd like to think so. So just slow down and stay with us. If there's a way out, I want to live to at least see it.
Lola frowned and slowly came down to us. But as soon as she came down to us, she started to cry.
I only came here because that stupid, long-faced, whatever guy told me that I'd see my sister again. But I don't know anymore. Maybe I should just accept that she's gone.
She fell to her knees and sobbed out the same name over and over.
Betty, Betty, where are you? Betty.
Ivy put her gun down and kneeled down to comfort her. And I don't know why I did this, but I stopped paying attention to what they were doing and just started to study the theater. Their conversation becoming just moans and groans in my ear. But I swore that much closer to me, near the seats, was a giggle. I looked at the seats of the theater and nearly screamed. In the seats were these ashy shadows of kids. Shadows who had these flakes flying off them, drifting up. I looked up and could see that what I thought was just rot on the ceiling was small stains of ash on ceiling tiles. The shadows were looking at me, and I felt my breath grow short and let out a yelp of fear. Ivy, what are those? I pointed to the shadows, and Lola and Ivy saw them too. These shadows were watching us, and Ivy shouted at them, pointing the gun at the one closest to me.
What do you want?
The shadows giggled a little louder. They didn't speak, but just kept staring. Lola tugged at Ivy's arm and whimpered out,
We need to leave now.
All of us collectively ran out of the theater, and as the door behind us shut, I swore I heard one of the giggles turn into a sob. We found ourselves now inside the dining hall from earlier, the one where I met Lola, but now in ruin, and a giant clay mouth in the ceiling. This mouth was drooling some sort of slime, creating a little puddle on the floor. We tried to quietly get through, but suddenly, out of the mouth, came a man. He fell down, and I knew that bellboy suit. It was the bellman. He slithered up, his clothes moving like a ribbon caught in a snake. Like his suit was in for the ride wherever the clay skin of his drove.
To your rooms now.
Ivy raised her gun, and Lola raised her cleaver.
To hell with that. How do me, Ivy, and Hazel get out of here?
He just laughed, the strings of wax in its mouth moving with each breath.
There is no exit in the dollhouse, dear. We treat our guests like family. And you're not part of it yet. So, feast!
The mouth vomited out more figures. As they got up, we realized it was those dolls. The half-wooden clay kids. There were over 5 of them at the least. So we ran to where the lobby would be, hoping to, if not escape them, maybe hide, or if not that, at least have somewhere to fight. But the hallway as we ran began to twist, like bending clay. And it would bend corners here, block a doorway there. The place felt like it was changing, like a dollhouse under construction. And as we kept turning more and more bending corners, these white little tiles began appearing all over the walls, like the tiles you would see inside of a shower or pool room. The white tiles would appear in little splotches here and there, but eventually, before we knew it, the entire hallway was just covered in tiles. Even where doors once were now just tiles that were 1 inch deeper than the rest of the wall. I took a quick glance behind us and saw the kids behind us. There was no longer 5, but 20 of them, I think. At least nearly 24 of them, chasing, screaming, crying. Gradually, the hallway started to get bigger and bigger. It was barely noticeable until I had realized that they were large enough to fit entire dining halls. Eventually, the hall had just become this large room full of doorways. We turned to the first one we saw, and inside of it was this large pool and nothing else. Just a pool and some loose things of swimming shorts off to the side. Just like all those dresses we saw earlier. I felt my breath leave as I thought we'd die, but Ivy reminded me of earlier.
Hazel, you said that they harden when they're in water, right?
Yeah.
What do you mean? How is some water gonna— Just jump, Lola! Just jump! How is that gonna—
Ivy shoved Lola into the pool and quickly shoved me in too. The bottom of the pool was moldy and gross, unlike the tiles above the water. I shuffled around and saw the dolls that were about to leap in. I swam back slightly and just watched the show. It was like a waterfall of the puppets. They fell in and quickly became stiff and couldn't move. It was like watching a child be turned to stone in real time. Seeing Medusa's curse happen right in front of me. One of them managed to get a grab of my ankle, which made me squirm and inhale some water, but the grip soon loosened as they turned to stone. I swam up to catch my breath and spit out the water I just breathed in. I could see the last 3 of those things just seeing what happened, and it looked like they had learned from their brothers' and sisters' errors. Lola swam up, seeming not to really care about all the kids that were nearby. One of the dolls, while she was getting up, tackled her. Ivy soon got out of the pool and kicked the doll on the side, knocking it into the pool. I eventually crawled out and waited for the last 2 to come charging. One came charging, and with some struggle, I grabbed onto it and awkwardly caused it to fall into the pool. The last one managed to grab Ivy and knocked her down. Lola ran up, grabbed it by one of its arms, and spun it around, hurling it into the pool. And then, silence filled the room. Not even the water seemed to make any noise. We just sat there, just trying to catch our breath. Lola shook her head, trying to get water out of her hair. I looked at Ivy, and she looked horrified. She's always been scared of pools and water. I scooted up to her and tried to rub her back. Hey, it's okay, Ivy. We made it.
I'm scared. I'm really scared right now, and I'm really scared.
Scared of what? The pool?
Or I'm sorry for all of this, Hazel.
I went ahead and rubbed her back a little harder and got closer to her side. Hey, you've done nothing. You're okay. She hiccuped with tears starting to roll down her still wet face.
When we got split up and we were on our own, the ferryman visited me and he told me the reason you're here is me.
What do you mean? She started shaking violently and began to just keep sobbing over and over. Ivy, please, just... She suddenly bolted to me and hugged me, the tightest I've ever been hugged, rinsing me out. And then she began to practically just scream into my shoulder and ear.
The stupid things I did to you in the real world brought you here. The ferryman told me so. He said I'm the reason you're here. It's my fault. It's my fault alone. I am the reason you're here. I am so sorry.
I didn't know what to say or how to respond. I just held her and let the words slowly drip into my head. But as they did, my hug loosened. Something dumb she did brought me here. Her bad actions are the reason I have to suffer. She's the reason I'm stuck in this hell. The reason I have to sleep with one eye open. The reason I've nearly gotten by with just the skin on my teeth. I'm suffering because of her. She's the reason I'm not able to feel Mom's hugs, to hear Dad's kind words when I cry, why I can't see my friends, why I can't watch cartoons in the TV box anymore. The reason I can't go home is her. I felt a tea kettle in my stomach boil. It began to whistle and shake my hands. Those shaking hands went from Ivy's back to her neck, and I started to strangle Ivy.
You stupid bitch! I hope you die, you bastard!
I could see a fear in her eyes, her red and tired eyes, now nearly white with pure fear. A part of me was happy. I felt joy seeing my quote-unquote sister I've lived with, who got me stuck in this nightmare and pain. I wanted to see her in pain, to see her suffer and cry. I wanted every ounce of hope and joy in those stupid eyes to get snuffed out like a candle. I wanted her dead and gone. I wanted to erase all the remnants of her from this damn world. I swore I could see her face going blue, but suddenly a boot hit my head and threw me down.
Calm down, Hazel. Ivy, are you okay?
The world around me spun. I could see double, maybe triple of everything. Everything near me spun until I heard Ivy cry out.
Lola, stop! Lola, put it down!
I looked up and saw Lola had taken Ivy's gun, and the barrel was pointed at me.
I should have never trusted you the second I saw you in that damn diner. All the people like you. I should have never trusted you. Lola, stop! That's my sister! I lost mine! What's the difference if you lose yours? She's okay, alright? Nothing's wrong with her, alright? Just calm down. Yeah, sure. That's what I thought too.
I tried to crawl away, but Lola got closer, the gun still pointed at my head.
You're insane. I swear to God,
Ivy had snuck up behind Lola and threw her to the ground, making the gun go to me now. I tried to hold it, but being half my size made it feel impossible. So, in an attempt to keep myself safe, I just threw it to the side. Ivy ran over to me and grabbed the gun as it was still sliding on the floor. She pointed it to Lola. I looked at both their faces. All three of us at this point were just crying. Either out of anger, fear, dread, terror, a little of all. All of our faces were just these masks of every single disgusting bad emotion known to man. I tried to listen to their fighting and screaming, but it was just noise. I couldn't make out the words. It was like listening to people talk near TV static or near water running. You could hear it and you knew what it was, but you couldn't make out the tiny details. But those tiny details were entire words, sentences, paragraphs even. I didn't know what to feel, think, so I ran. I ran to anywhere but here, anywhere but this hellhole called a place. All my vision caught was blurs of the white tiles, lights above me dancing cold blue to warm yellow. My eyes glued to a floor that led to God knows where. I only realized they went after me when I fell on a slightly bumpy tile and looked back and saw Ivy and Lola running to me. Ivy jumped down and held me as Lola bent down and tried to rub my head, but before her fingers could even touch my hood, Ivy smacked her hand.
You just tried to shoot my damn sister! Leave her alone, you stupid moron!
I pushed Ivy away too as she finished her yelling and just crawled to a corner and just sobbed. Everything around me was a blur. My only thoughts on what Ivy said. My sister, the closest thing to a friend in my whole life, the only person I could actually say cares about me other than my own parents. She trapped me here. She trapped me here because she did something bad? Ivy and Lola were just these blurry creatures around me, these shapes that are colored in something slightly familiar. They made sounds I knew but no longer could understand. I didn't know what was going on, so I just screamed. Mom! Dad! Help me! I just started sobbing the hardest I've ever sobbed. My body shaking with my eyes so full of tears. I was practically blind. Wake me up, please! That shape I used to call Ivy got closer to me and hugged me. It tried to whisper into my ear, but I just heard mumbles buried under tears. That disgusting, stupid weight tied to my shoes when I drowned that damn lake that sunk me into this hell. That stupid, bloated, fat, rotten corpse that came from the same womb as me. Ivy tried to kiss my cheek, but I just shoved her back. Stop! Just let me sit. Wherever, Hazel. I'm sorry. I don't... There's nothing you or her can do to make me happy ever again. Hazel, look, me and Ivy... You're the reason I'm here, right? Yeah. Did the ferryman tell you that there's no way out? He said yes, but it's the ferryman. What if he's lying? What if he isn't? Lola went ahead and scooted over right near me. She got close, and my tired mind didn't even fight to keep distance. Look, you, me, and Ivy may not know if there's a way out, but it's at least worth trying to find a way out like you said earlier. Lola began to pat my shoulder and lean in even closer, and her eyes practically looked into my soul. My papa always said that if you fail trying something, you can at least say you tried. And that's something that not many people can say. But to not even try and just let the failure happen, well, nothing you can say would defend that loss. I nodded, only half even processing the words she said. All that was on my mind was just anger. No, not even anger, just this feeling of not being able to take any more feelings. Not one more sound, one more word, not one more creature around the corner. Lola tugged at me as she got off the floor. Come on, let's get out of here, at least, and rest somewhere a little more safe, okay? I nodded weakly, barely able to remember how to even use my own feet. We left this bathroom-like place and found ourselves back in those rotted, half-burnt corpses of hallways. The floors slowly become grating between a void, then back to rotten floorboards. Floating bodies connected via strings of clay into the doors with rooms so full of teeth and eyes, and clay that nearly leaked out the doorway. The world outside felt like a long-lost tale, a story told by grandpas to kids who had never heard the word sky before. I felt like I had forgotten what the sky looked like at this point. I felt like I was stuck in this hotel for longer than my own mind could think of. Like 1 second out there was 4 hours here or something. How long have we been here? A few days? A few hours? I didn't know, and either answer would make me feel scared. The idea that I've been here for days made me feel trapped, but the idea that it's only been a few hours made me feel lost. Slowly, the hallways began to have something more dangerous in them than usual. The grating started to disappear. Holes in the floor were just there now, leading to who knows where. Well, after some walking and dodging the holes, we saw a flash of light from one of them. We all froze and heard a loud bang come back to us. Thunder. Ivy, Hazel, that's thunder. All of us carefully got near a large hole in the ground and kept our eyes glued to the void. After a few seconds, another flash came, and we finally realized where this hotel was. This hotel, if you can even call it that, was above some cosmically large building, and connecting the two were mile-long pillars of the same clay we've seen in these halls. Like when you try to take apart a PBJ and the jelly strings were still attached. The building under us, from what we could see, was just all gray concrete. And Lola had this look on her face of recognizing something. Like this was an old home she'd seen once before. An old photo she'd seen in her life before entering. I turned to her and tapped her shoulder. You okay, Lola?
Yeah, Ivy, I'm fine. I swear never mind.
She bolted up and went back to exploring the holes before me and Ivy even got back up. As we followed after her, Ivy stuck out her arm. She bent down and whispered to me.
Stay behind her. I don't trust her, Hazel.
Why?
She pointed my gun at you. I don't trust that brat.
I mean, I was choking you, but...
It's fine. You're my sister. I don't care. But her saying she... God.
She seemed to itch the gun in her rucksack. We eventually got up with Lola, and the holes ahead of us were starting to change again. The chainmail guarding us from the distance of the building under had slowly started to appear again, and the colors were new colors now. The red of the holes turned into a blue. The doors had less carvings, looking more normal. Like it wasn't a fancy hotel, but a normal one. One that you'd stop when you're in the middle of a road trip. The walls were more bland, less style, and more generic. Then, after some more wandering, we heard piano music up ahead. Me and Ivy froze as Lola kept walking. Lola, stop!
It's just music.
It could be...
What, some trap or some crap?
Yeah? She sighed and slowly walked back to us. Ivy pulled out her gun and walked ahead of me and her. Ahead of us was a doorway, which stood out for the fact that there was actually light coming from it and not just wax. Ivy stood at the doorway and just stared. I soon peeked in there to see what she saw, and I froze too. There sat two long arms poking out from a ceiling ridden with missing tiles. The two arms were playing the piano, and the fingers and piano had dried blood on them. The music itself sounded broken, old, and forgotten, like someone left a musician to rot here for the rest of time. The arms had these desaturated blue sleeves, similar to the bellboy, but they were made to fit the long size of these arms. The arms didn't seem to notice us, and if they did, they didn't care. Lola stepped in and got near the piano. The hands then suddenly stopped. The only sound now was just the ringing in our ears and Ivy's own scared breath. And suddenly, the hands flew up within seconds. The whole time, this nasty slithering sound just appearing, then fading away as fast as they moved. And from the darkness of this empty room came the bellman again. He walked over, making Ivy raise her gun, and he spoke, mockingly.
You're going to shoot me? I'm the servant of the landlady.
Ivy's hand shook as she tilted her head in confusion.
I'm but a bellman. Nothing more, nothing less. I'm simply doing as the lady who drains the other side asks me.
Lola got in front of me, acting like he was going to charge at us.
Dear children, how do you not realize everything is a corpse with no heart? Everything needs a soul to run, including the walls of a home. With no residence, there's no home left. A home with no soul but its empty husk of a thing. There is no home with no one in charge. She, the landlady, pulls my strings, and the wires of the arms, and bends these holes.
The bellman then slammed his hand into the wall near him, causing wooden splinters to go flying. But it was mostly the same clay we've seen over and over ooze out through the hole he now punched in.
This is a clay copy, a mimic of a home once made long ago, a building rebuilt from distant photos and memories of those in the past. Below is the real location, a rotten, moldy, evicted home of no one, only the rotten, empty shell. remains.
His eyes suddenly glued to Lola, and even though there were no actual eyes, I could feel them dilate.
You're in her home. You rotten child.
He started laughing maniacally, and as he did, the hole in his mouth grew and grew and grew until he had pretty much no head, and then this orange gas of some sort began to come out of his face. The smell got into my nose, and it felt like my mind was melting. Like when you're in the hospital and they make you breathe that weird stuff. The gas filled the room, making the light above us both darken and turn into an orange-like color. We tried to stumble out, but a loud bang of a falling ceiling tile caught our nearly asleep mind's attention. The arms in the ceiling came back, and then some. Multiple arms of ungodly length popped out and reached for us. Ivy tried to shoot one of them, but one of the many hands yanked her gun and then pulled her up into the abyss that was the ceiling. Soon the arm grabbed me and Lola and yanked us up into the darkness, as the bellboy just kept laughing the entire time. The last thing I recall between being dragged and then waking up was feeling this goo around me, like I was being dragged through a throat. But after that, I believe the orange gas finally kicked in, putting me to sleep. But once I woke up, I felt my eyes covered in something. I tried to move my legs. They were stuck, and I was barely able to move my left arm. It was like a bunch of slimy blankets were on me. After some wiggling, I managed to get my left arm unstuck and felt around. I was buried in clay. My nose was fine, but my mouth and eyes were covered. I clawed at the clay on my face, ever so slowly digging it off. A part of me thinking most of it probably got underneath my fingernails. Then it actually got yanked off. I have no idea how long I spent with just one arm yanking clay off my face. I do know by the time I was able to move my head, my arm was sore and throbbing. When I finally saw where I was so caught off guard. This was no longer that fancy hotel, the pool-looking area, or even that normal-looking hotel area. It was just this concrete room and a window out into nothingness. The place was barely lit by something in the sky, but it was something I couldn't see. The room had that all too familiar clay covering bits of its walls and the corners, and when looking inside the clay, I nearly fell over. Inside of it was things like toes and fingers and hands, kids who weren't as lucky as me and were buried 6 feet deep into the clay. Their skin was pale, their digits were stiff, and dark spots dotted them. I couldn't tell if it was rot or maybe the clay trying to grow onto them. I then realized if I was trapped in there, Ivy might be too, and she might not be as lucky. I ran around this apartment, this room, whatever it was, looking around the bits of clay to see if I could find anything, hoping I'd see her legs, her face, maybe even a part of her clothes, her rucksack. I was feeling more and more fear just fill my mind, and I knew I shouldn't, but I decided to yell out for them. Ivy! Ivy? Lola? The only thing that ever responded back was just my echo. I left the area and realized I was in one of many rooms. It was like an apartment complex. And in the other rooms were frames of furniture, TVs, and this all started to sound familiar, but I just couldn't put my finger on it. But I swore that this place, I heard about it, it sounded familiar, but I swear I'd maybe never seen it before. My feet were hurting with how fast I was trying to run around and find Ivy. I kept going back and forth, scared I missed her, scared her face was buried into the clay and she couldn't breathe. The image of her corpse in the clay made me sweat with fear. And after what felt like an hour, maybe multiple, I just fell and just gave up. If Ivy was buried in the clay, she would be dead by now. God, she probably died while I was asleep. Her corpse is just sitting in the clay, probably already having those little tendrils wrap around her skin. I fell even harder onto the ground, now in the fetal position, just sobbing. I didn't feel like I was anywhere. I felt like I was laying on my kitchen floor having a bad dream. I had to be dreaming at this point. This can't be real. This is just a little nightmare, right? That's all it is. I have to wake up. I have to. It can't get worse than this. It just can't. I'm alone. Ivy and Lola are maybe dead. It's gonna end soon. I'm gonna wake up, alright? Like, I have to wake up soon. All I could think was me wandering these halls by myself, just rotting, looking for my sister who I'll never see again. Maybe I'd become one of those things. I started thinking about every single creature we've ever seen on our way here. Maybe they were just like us, little kids who got too far trapped in here and just died. Would I become some evil, tall lady, a head touching the ceiling, looking for a sister I'd never find? I don't know how long I sat there with tear-filled eyes, just praying I'd wake up soon. But then I heard footsteps, and I tried to run, but I just didn't. My legs weren't even stuck, they just refused to work, so I just embraced it. This was the end, it was finally over. I'd either wake up in Mom's arms, Dad's arms, Ivy's arms, or never wake up again. Both sounded ideal to me, this far into a nightmare. I felt a hand and a gasp on my skin. I just prayed that what or who did what they did, it'd be fast. That the sound around my ears would soon snap away and I'd be taken away from here. But instead, I heard Lola's voice, and that felt even worse to hear than just nothing.
Hazel, oh my God, you're alive, Jesus. She pulled my limp body up and shook me a little. Hey, you all there?
Where's Ivy? Is she okay? She sighed and looked at the ground for a second. My heart stopped beating for just a split second.
I don't know. I was hoping you would know.
No. I fell back onto the floor. Fetal position too, and just did what I did earlier. Sobbed.
Hazel, it's gonna be okay. Alright? It's gonna be alright.
I've been trying to think that all this time, but this is a nightmare that won't end. I want to wake up. When will I just wake up? Lola shook me around for a second and then stared deep into my eyes, and then my soul.
We'll find her, I promise. Alright, look, I found an elevator, and I think it leads out of here, but
I won't leave Ivy.
That's what I was gonna say. Alright, just listen, alright? We're gonna find her, alright? You understand? We're gonna find her, we'll get out, alright? And then we'll try to get out of this building.
I half listened, looking at the room around us, and then I asked her, "Is this that place you
woke up in that story earlier?" Yeah, I think I know what's going on here. These two places, they're feeding on each other. Like this place is...
A loud bang and a muffled laugh came from some distance away, and I knew from Lola's reaction. It was the lady, the one with the stitched face. Lola practically threw me over into a dark corner that had this small little lamp table hiding us. I peeked my head out and saw the lady that Lola had told me about earlier. It was worse than anything my mind imagined. Her head nearly touched the ceiling. Her arms looked like they could touch her knees without bending. Her face was nothing but 2 long stitches, a nose, and one eye that haunts me. It had a 1,000-yard stare, but a stare that always looked like it was watching me. She looked around, trying to probably find where that loud sobbing of my stupid mouth was from earlier. She peeked under tables, opened up whatever drawers or any cabinets she could find, but she thankfully didn't realize that we were in this corner and didn't check. She stomped her foot out of anger and stormed out. Me and Lola were tiptoeing out, but then the sudden sight of something stopped us. A light began to shine from behind us. The sun was shining. For the first time in a long time, there was a sun in this nightmare world. It was sickly yellow, like shower curtains, and the sun itself was cloaked behind clouds, but it was enough for the room to become lit beyond whatever imaginary lights were here. Lola stared at it and froze.
It's the sun in the counties.
What?
The sun shines there on the first day of fall.
But I don't get it.
Me neither.
Lola then suddenly began to walk towards a balcony in this building. She looked up and gasped.
Hazel, look up.
I did as she said, and I gasped too, feeling my lungs drain whatever air was left. This structure, that at a quick glance seemed to go down forever, had a top, and at that top were these two large gray pillars. The pillars that connected another building that was seemingly floating. That said building was covered by clouds, its tops unknowable. It was the hotel. The hotel that we were in so long ago. But when we were getting dragged to here, we were being dragged up. Unless we were dragged down while we were unconscious. I didn't know, but my eyes were glued to the sight for a solid minute. As my eyes were glued to this impossibly large structure, I felt something hit my eye. It was a snowflake, I thought at first, but realized it was a tiny piece of paint. And what I thought was snow, I realized was debris after a piece of debris fell a little too close for comfort. It was chunks of wood, concrete, and metal all falling. Snowflakes of destruction falling to the top of an impossibly tall apartment. What made me snap out of the trance was a bathtub falling and nearly hitting us. Lola yanked me back as it fell onto the concrete balcony and nearly shattered in front of us. After catching our breath for a second, we finally began to explore the halls of this place. The one part of her story I forgot was the people with faces stitched into ceilings. They were more gross than even she described. She never told me how rotten and moldy they were. Well, some of them were, but most of them were covered in gunk. Their shaking bodies here so long, mold found shelter on their skin. Some of them were lit up with TVs with static, a show on that only they could see. As slips and giggles and groans would leak out the stitching. One loud giggle made us stop, though, and we saw a woman who was almost tearing her stitching out. Not on purpose, we'd think, but more that the shaking she was doing had caused the stitching on her head to loosen from the ceiling. The nail holding her up, having the wire around it slowly get more and more torn. And we just stood there, watching as the sounds of hell breached out the tearing stitching. Soon enough, the stitching finally broke, and the woman fell. And the second her corpse hit the concrete floor, the yelling stopped. Lola looked over the corpse and put her fingers on its neck.
Cold. Stone cold. She was dead long before she fell.
Then why was she... you know...
I don't know. How did those long arms drag us into the ceiling and got us here?
Fair enough. Lola ran her fingers across the body's face, shutting dead eyes that were not even there. As she was doing that, I looked around the room we were in, and on a very, very moldy table was a dusty roll of stitching. Hey, Lola, I have an idea.
What is it?
What if we, use this and leave a little trail so we don't get lost? She nodded and, for the first time in a long time, gave me a grin.
That's smart. Put it near the elevator, and let's go try to find Ivy.
The stitching itself was thankfully dark enough to stick out against the concrete floor, but you did have to squint a little to see it. I followed Lola with a roll of stitching in my hand, and each room reminded me of this one painting. It was this painting of an island, and I've seen it over and over in restaurants, my uncle's home, in school, in the mall, everywhere. They were all slightly different, but each painting of that island contained the same thing. Every room had a person stitched into the ceiling, small flakes of old bare furniture, and sometimes they'd have a little TV to light them up, with nothing but the sight of static, lighting them like a stage light mid-play. As we wandered through, a sound began to fade in through the concrete walls. The sound of a song, and I could barely catch the lyrics.
Smoke from a chimney means a log on the fire and the log on the fire means love.
With no clue for anywhere for us to go, we traveled to the source. Part of me hoped maybe it was Ivy singing, but as we got closer, I soon realized it was the song playing through something, likely some sort of record player. But as we got closer, there was more and more of that clay, and in it was more dead kids. More bodies of children who are not as lucky as me and Lola. Their eyes. The eyes are what haunt me the most. Eyes buried in clay, frozen in fear, desperation, sadness, and in some, I could sense acceptance. An acceptance I understood fully. As we got closer to the sound, the sight of clay grew more and more, no longer being in just rooms, but the halls now. And soon we found the end of this building. In the hallway where the music was, the hall ended like a broken road after an earthquake, and the edges of this hallway were gooey and red. Not blood, but more like if a drop of blood spilled into milk. The goo was clearly there, but somehow blood found its way in, and then clicked for me and Lola, and the two of us looked at each other at the same time, the same realization in both of our heads. This building's base, maybe even the one above us, the thing holding it together was the clay. The clay was the blood of this place in a literal sense, with its red look. And speaking of the devil, we heard a familiar voice down the hallway.
Oh, sweetheart. I love you.
Me and Lola peeked our head into the room it came from, the same place as the music. There, we saw a horrific but somewhat beautiful sight. The lady that Lola had talked about and the bellboy were slow dancing, their hands in a grip so tight it'd choke a man. The lady humming joyous moans as the bellboy kept whispering sweet little words.
I will be with you till death.
Behind them was a photo hung on a wall, and something clicked in my head, but not fully. The photo was a couple dancing, a tall, dark man and a tiny lady, the two holding hands, just like the two monsters in front of us. They were those people at one point. They were humans at some point, but they got turned into this? Were they humans when they got here? Did they become this the second they entered? Was this hell not only for us, but for them? So many questions, but at the same time, so many things were being put together. I peeked a little further into the room and saw that the record player, which was blaring its jolly tune, was half buried in clay. And peeking just a little bit more, I was able to see that there was sadly no sign of Ivy. But just as I was about to lean out, the two of them began to tilt. The bellboy, with a flick of his wrist, spun the lady around, twirling her around with glee and joy I've never seen in any of these monsters. The only other creatures I've seen with so much joy was the scarecrow man and the gnomes. But as the lady twirled, her eye caught us. She let out a groan, and the bellboy looked up with her. The woman's head began to shake. It was shaking so much I was expecting it to pop. And then, with a gush of blood, she tore the stitching out of her mouth with her own face muscles and screamed. The two let go of their own hands and dashed right for us. Me and Lola ran, following the trail of stitching that we had left for us to follow. The couple steps sounded like they were always one step away from grabbing us. The halls we had spent so long creeping through, we now ran through in record speed. A hall we took minutes to cross, we ran through in mere seconds. The entire time, the lady was screaming like a woman in fresh grief. We eventually reached the elevator and Lola tugged at my arm.
I'll lift you up. Hit the button.
But Ivy—
Screw your sister. We need to leave. I won't. You
Leave.
stupid idiot. If we don't get out, we'll...
The lady and bellboy turned the corner, and their run turned into a slow walk. Like they wanted to make us fearful. Like they wanted us to be afraid. I tried to think of where me and Lola could run, but everywhere was a dead end. Me and her slowly backed away, shivering the entire time. and as we were backing away from the elevator, the bellboy spoke to us.
I know your face, Hazel. I've seen it on the posters before.
What?
When you and your sister fled reality, me and my lovely wife saw your faces. You two were stapled and nailed into the walls of the city. Cops tried to find you, but there was no corner that hid you. Then he told us how to find our little girl, our dear sweet Rosie. All we had to do was cut the stitching that created the dolls in the first place.
What do you mean? What did you do?
When you kill the doll maker, no more dolls can flood the streets.
What do you mean?
If you wake up, dear, you'll be met with no arms to grab you.
By this point, we had backed up into a corner, and the bellman bent down, his arms, like usual, behind his back.
There's no God out there. We've searched for our little Rosie, our girl who was spat on for that little dot on her nose, a girl who we tried to shelter and protect, who we loved oh so much, whisked away by a greedy pit of watchers who keep a ferryman on a leash. He'd leave if he could, but he's chained by a million nails, each soul yanked away. One more nail is gone. The more he takes, the more free he becomes.
The bellman bent up and nodded to his wife.
With pleasure, darling.
She grabbed me and yanked me up, and I screamed in terror as Lola cried out for me.
Hazel, put her down now.
She grabbed me and pulled out a horribly long needle, the needle tied to a large stitching roll on her side.
It'll prick, but soon you can join the others.
I squirmed and fought and shook, and just as I felt the needle prick at my cheek, a deafening bang filled the hall. It was Ivy. She'd used one of the few bullets left in her gun to kill the lady. The lady stood there, still, before collapsing. By the time she had felled, the bellman had bent his arms down and caught her. The bellman didn't go after me, Ivy, or Lola, but instead he just fell down. He fell down and sobbed, and out of his face was normal things. A nose popped out from under the wax, eyeballs slowly began to roll out from the empty sockets, teeth slithered their way out of the mouth, and as his teeth rolled out, he began to sob and cry in a voice that sounded more human.
My darling, wake up. Please, don't die on me. Till death, we said, till death. Till we find Rosie. Till we find our girl. Till we find her. We shall walk with our toes till they break. Wake up, sweetie. Wake up, please! I'm begging you! Wake up!
He began to melt, his body getting smaller and shorter, and the entire time, he was just cursing us.
You worthless damn kids! You rotten, spoiled bastards! You took our Rosie! You stole her from us!
As he was melting more and more, the building we were in began to shake. Bits of concrete flew off the wall like flakes of dandruff, and the clay sweated out of those holes. Ivy and Lola both jumped and hit the call button on the elevator.
Come on, come on.
Why is it taking so long?
Do you two not realize how many floors there are? We're on floor 19 bajillion out of...
And like that, the elevator was there. Like it only had to travel 3 floors and not the millions and millions of floors of the structure. After some confused glances, we all rushed in, and the button for the elevator only showed 20 floors. Lola hit the ground floor, and the door shut with a nasty squeal. I turned over to Ivy. Her eyes hadn't blinked this whole time, and I started to feel fear in my gut. Are we going to die, Ivy?
You and your sister are gonna be alright, alright? We're gonna be okay. Lola, it's 1,000,000 floors tall. How are we gonna survive this place collapsing?
The elevator began shaking, most likely debris hitting its roof, and Lola began to tear up.
God, why did I take that ferryman's offer? Why did I?
Somehow, just like that, we had reached the ground floor. The area beyond the elevator was what appeared to be a hospital lobby. On a wall was a large red cross cartoon character with a nurse hat. The said character was half eroded away by time. I didn't get a good look at it or the other bits of furniture because Ivy was yanking at my hand as we all ran out of the building. Outside of this structure was this gloomy, cloudy town of some sort, but most of the buildings here were only 3 floors high at most. But the town itself was covered in dust and debris, most likely from the monolith dropping debris like rainfall. A louder crash than usual came from behind us. The monolith was falling. The top part that had been attached via the waxy pillars was starting to collapse. The waxy pillars were seemingly drying up and cracking like glass. Essentially, the top was falling onto the bottom and caving it in. With a new rush of adrenaline, we kept running for I don't know how long. By the time we managed to stop, our legs hurt, our feet were numb, and our bodies were soaked in sweat. But after a long, long run, we jumped into the back of what appeared to be an abandoned ice cream van. By this point, we thought that we were far away enough to avoid whatever blast or dust would hit us. We all just turned around and admired how far we ran. And with tired breath, we all sighed, and Ivy spoke for the first time in what felt like ever.
That was close. Ivy, Hazel, do any of you two know how to drive?
No.
I know how to drive. I've learned how to hotwire a car before. We can just take this van and...
The van suddenly started up. From behind the wall where the driver's seat sat, I realized there was a buzzing. It sounded like bees. Dozens and dozens of bees buzzing where a driver would be. With the back door still open, whoever was driving took off. We all shared scared glances at each other. We were safe from that couple, the falling building, and didn't need to run now, but whoever or whatever was driving very likely wouldn't give us a warm welcome.